The conference room at Horizon Dynamics was a battlefield of frayed nerves and flickering hopes. A massive screen loomed at the front, its red error codes pulsing like a warning siren. Scattered papers, half-empty coffee cups, and glowing laptops cluttered the polished mahogany table. 15 engineers some pacing. Others slouched in defeat filled the space with a tension so thick it seemed to hum. At the head of the room stood Daniel Harper, CEO and founder, his broad shoulders rigid as if bracing for a storm. His voice was low, but the sharpness in it cut through the chaos. "Run it by me again," he said, his eyes narrowing. "And this time, act like I'm not the one signing your checks." A young engineer, barely out of grad school, fidgeted with his pen, his Adam's apple bobbing. "We've torn through every system, rebooted the processors, rewired the sensors. We've run simulations in every condition: city streets, highways, rain, fog. The car still drifts off course. We don't know why." Daniel's jaw clenched, his arms folding tightly across his chest. "You don't know," he repeated, each word a slow burn. An older engineer, with graying temples under tired slouch, spoke up. "We think it's signal interference, maybe from overlapping data streams. It's rare, unpredictable, but it's there." Daniel dragged a hand over his face, his patience unraveling. "So, 15 of the sharpest minds in Seattle have been at this for 3 weeks, and the best you've got is we think a maybe." Silence swallowed the room. The air felt heavier, the walls closer. Daniel turned to the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the Seattle skyline, where gray clouds churned over Puget Sound. Horizon Dynamics was weeks away from unveiling its flagship projector, self-driving car poised to reshape the industry. Investors were restless, tech journalists were circling, and now the entire launch hung by a thread. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his assistant. "Nanny's here with Sophie." Daniel exhaled sharply, pocketed the device, and without a word, strode out of the room, leaving his team to stew in their failure. The lobby was a world apart of LED lights, a sleek reception desk, and the faint clatter of keyboards from nearby offices. Waiting near the entrance was Sarah Mitchell, her dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail, her rain-dampened coat slung over one arm. Beside her stood Sophie, Daniel's 6-year-old daughter, clutching a stuffed bunny, her yellow rain boots squeaking on the marble floor with every restless step. "Just here for the house key," Sarah said, offering a quick, unassuming smile. "We'll be out of your way in a minute." Daniel fished the key from his pocket, his mind still tangled in the boardroom's chaos. Sophie tugged at his sleeve, her wide eyes sparkling. "Daddy, can I see the car? The one that drives all by itself?" Please, her voice, so much like her late mother's, pierced his defenses. He hesitated, then softened. 5 minutes, kiddo. Then you're home for dinner." Sophie's face lit up, and she grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her along. The three of them navigated the gleaming corridors of Horizon Dynamics, passing glass-walled offices and curious glances from employees. They headed toward the restricted R&D lab, a fortress of innovation where the company's future was being forged or, lately, unraveled. Engineers nodded curtly as they passed, their eyes sliding over Sarah without a second thought. She was just a nanny, a background figure in their high-stakes world, invisible, unremarkable. But in a matter of hours, Sarah Mitchell would become a name that sparked awe, controversy, and a reckoning on that would challenge everything Horizon Dynamics believed about talent, sacrifice, and the quiet injustices that simmer beneath the surface. The R&D lab was a cathedral of cutting-edge tech, all polished concrete and humming machines, but the air carried the weight of defeat. The massive screen on the far wall still displayed jagged data points, a taunting reminder of the problem no one could solve. Engineers hunched over their stations, their fingers flying across keyboards, their focus fraying with every failed test. Daniel led Sarah and Sophie inside, his expression distant, as if he were still arguing with his team in his head. Sophie, oblivious to the tension, broke free and darted toward the prototype car's sleek, silver sedan that gleamed under the lab's harsh lights. "Is this the one that drives by itself?" she asked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Supposed to," Daniel said, crouching beside her, his tone softer than it had been all day. "But it's getting confused." Sophie tilted her head, her braid swinging. "Like when I can't find Mr. Floppy at bedtime." Sarah let out a quiet chuckle, and even Daniel's lips twitched into a fleeting smile. He stood and pointed to the wall display, where a digital map traced the car's last test run, every turn, every stop, every inexplicable drift. Colored lines snaked across the screen, marking the car's missteps through Seattle's downtown grid. Sarah lingered a few steps behind, her eyes scanning the display with a focus that seemed out of place for someone just there to pick up a key. Where others saw a mess of numbers and lines, she saw pattern subtle, but unmistakable. Her brow furrowed, and then, in a voice so soft it barely carried, she said, "Have you checked if the car's picking up signals from multiple towers at once?" Daniel turned sharply, his brows knitting. "What do you mean?" Sarah hesitated, her hands tightening around Sophie's backpack strap. "In cities like Seattle, cell towers are packed close together, some nights just a block apart. If the car's navigation system is pulling data from more than one tower at the same time, it might not know which signal to trust." The room froze. An engineer nearby, a lanky man with glasses perched on his nose, stopped typing. Another stood and shuffled toward the screen, squinting at the section Sarah had pointed to. "Hang on," he muttered, his voice tinged with cautious excitement. "That could be it. Pull it up," Daniel ordered, his tone clipped but urgent. The head engineer, Greg, a wiry veteran with a perpetual frown, tapped at his console. The screen refreshed, overlaying the car's route with signal data from Seattle's dense network of towers. There it was, clear as day. Moments of hesitation, late turns, drifts all aligned with instances where the car had received overlapping signals from multiple sources. The vehicle wasn't broken. It was overwhelmed, trying to obey conflicting instructions. No one had seen it yet, after weeks of simulations, not with a team of PhDs and millions in equipment. But Sarah had, in under a minute. "She's right," Greg said, his voice hushed, almost reverent. "That's the root of it." The silence that followed wasn't the tense quiet of failure, but the stunned hush of revelation. Every eye in the lab turned to Sarah, not with doubt, but with something closer to awe. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. "How did you know that?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably, her cheeks flushing under the scrutiny. "I used to work in navigation systems, a while back. It's just something I remembered." Sophie, oblivious to the weight of the moment, piped up with a grin. "Told you she's super smart, Daddy." Daniel's gaze didn't waver. This wasn't luck or a fluke. This was expertise dip, practiced, and hidden in plain sight. Sarah knelt beside Sophie, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face, as if she hadn't just saved a project worth billions. Daniel watched her, his world tilting on its axis. No degree framed on the wall, no LinkedIn profile boasting her credentials, no corner office with her name on the door. Yet she'd seen what his entire team had missed. He didn't know what else she was hiding. But one thing was certain: Sarah Mitchell was the most important person in that room. That evening, Daniel sat in his corner office, the Seattle skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the city's lights into a kaleidoscope of color. A file lay open on his desk, not a contract or a quarterly report, but a dossier on Sarah Mitchell, age 27, MIT graduate with honors in electrical engineering and computer science, 3 years at a leading aerospace firm, where she'd been a rising star. Anything. No scandals, no public meltdowns, just a sudden exit from the industry 2 years ago. Now she was a nanny, living in a modest apartment in Capitol Hill, caring for his daughter and her own younger brother. It didn't add up, and that mystery gnawed at him. He invited her to stay after Sophie was asleep. The house was quiet, the only sound the soft clink of mugs as they sat at the kitchen table with chamomile tea. The warm glow of the pendant light cast soft shadows across Sarah's face, highlighting the faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes. "I looked into your background," Daniel admitted, his tone straightforward, but not accusing. Sarah didn't flinch. She sipped her tea, her expression calm. Figured you might. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. Why'd you walk away from aerospace? You were at the top of your game. Sarah set her mug down, her eyes drifting to the window, where rain tapped a steady rhythm. My dad died when I was 22. Heart attack, out of nowhere. It was just me and my brother, Ethan, who was 11. A few months later, Ethan got sick of leukemia, chemo, hospital stays, the whole nightmare. He needed me, and my job wasn't built for that. They offered part-time, but the pressure was clear. Get back to normal or get out. I couldn't leave Ethan to face that alone. Her voice was steady, no trace of self-pity, just the quiet weight of truth. Daniel listened, his coffee untouched, his usual guardedness softening. I quit, Sarah continued, her gaze returning to him. Found work that let me stay close to him. Nannying was simple, stable. It gave us peace, and honestly, I like kids. They're honest, no games. She shrugged, a small, matter-of-fact gesture. Daniel studied her, struck by her clarity. She was different from the polished executives he dealt with daily, always angling for the next promotion, their smiles calculated. Sarah didn't need to prove herself, and that made her magnetic. You could have gone back, he said. With your skills, companies would be begging for you. She smiled faintly, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Maybe someday. Right now, Ethan's still my priority. And Sophie's pretty great too. He nodded, the weight of her words settling over him. Daniel had built Horizon Dynamics by controlling every variable, chasing every advantage. He thrived on precision, results, power. But here was someone who'd walked away from prestige, from a corner office, for something deeper family, duty, love. It wasn't weakness. It was a strength he rarely saw, one that made his world feel suddenly small. You didn't hesitate in the lab today, he said, his voice lower now. You knew exactly what you were looking at. She shrugged again, her fingers curling around her mug. Some things stick with you. He watched her, noting the steady way she held herself, the quiet resolve in her eyes. For a man used to boardrooms and power plays, Sarah Mitchell was disarming. He didn't say it aloud, but the thought took root. I've never met anyone who chose the right thing so quietly. The next morning, Daniel called Sarah into his office. The space was all clean lines and modern minimalism desk, leather chairs, a view of the Space Needle piercing the clouds. He skipped the pleasantries, cutting straight to the point. You saw what we couldn't. I want you consulting, part-time, flexible hours. Come in when you can. Sarah sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap, her expression guarded. I appreciate the offer, Daniel, but I'm not ready to jump back in. Ethan and Sophie need me. Quiet's worth more than a title right now. Daniel frowned, leaning forward. Why not? You're better than half my team, maybe all of them. She gave a half smile, her eyes steady. Because my life isn't just mine. That should have been the end of it. Daniel wasn't used to hearing no, and he didn't chase people who turned him down. But that night, as he tucked Sophie into bed, she handed him a crayon drawing a wobbly sketch of the prototype car with stick figures labeled Daddy, me, and Sarah. In bold, uneven letters, it read, Sarah fixed the car. Sophie grinned, her eyes bright. You should let her fix more stuff, Daddy. Daniel chuckled, but the idea took hold, burrowing deep. The next morning, Sarah returned to his office, holding the drawing. Its edges creased from Sophie's enthusiastic grip. Sophie's a tough negotiator, she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. 3 days a week, no press, no fuss. Daniel nodded, a rare smile breaking through. Deal. Sarah joined the team quietly, slipping into the lab like she'd always been there. She sat with engineers young enough to be her students, guiding them through knotty problems with a precision that bordered on surgical. She had a knack for explaining complex systems without ego, her calm voice cutting through confusion like a blade. One afternoon, as she walked a junior engineer through a connectivity issue, Daniel watched from the edge of the lab, his arms crossed. You think in systems, he told her later, after she'd untangled the problem in under 10 minutes. She glanced at him, her lips quirking. I think in people, machines just listen better. Outside the lab, something else began to grow. At first, it was Practicalstra was around more, so they shared dinners when Daniel worked late. He'd read Sophie bedtime stories, while Sarah washed dishes, the clink of plates mingling with Sophie's sleepy giggles. But soon, those moments felt like home, a rhythm neither of them had expected. One evening, Sophie begged Sarah to help her build a robot friend on her tablet. Sarah introduced her to Scratch, turning coding into a game. Make the dog chase the ball, Sarah whispered, leaning close, but only if the balls blew. Sophie squealed with laughter, her small hands tapping the screen. Daniel watched from the kitchen doorway, his usual guardedness melting away. Later, Sophie showed off her projector blocky robot that spun when clicked. I named him Uncle Sparky, she declared proudly. Why Uncle? Daniel asked, amused. Because he fixes stuff and gives good hugs, like you and Sarah. Daniel laughed, a real, unguarded laugh, the first in months. He caught Sarah's eye across the room, her smile warm and unguarded. They didn't speak, but the air between them shifted, carrying the weight of something something neither of them was ready to name. Months passed, and the navigation project stabilized under Sarah's guidance. She became chief systems strategist, her name appearing on internal memos and patent applications, though she still wore jeans and tied her hair back like always. Ethan, her brother, was walking again, his leukemia in remission, thanks to the best care the newly established Ethan Fund could provide. The fund, launched by Horizon Dynamics, supported students in science and engineering who'd faced personal hardships. Inspired by Sarah's story, Ethan grinned now, a real 13-year-old grin, playing catch with Sophie in the company courtyard or tinkering in the lab's simulator, his eyes bright with curiosity. One morning, Sarah brought Daniel an envelope. Inside was Sophie's kindergarten essay, titled My Family. In purple crayon, Sophie had written, My family is Daddy, Sarah, Ethan, and me. We make pancakes. We fix cars. We love each other. Daniel read it 3 times, his throat tight. That evening, as Sarah rinsed mugs in the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, watching her. He'd waited long enough. From his pocket, he pulled a simple silver ring, its surface warm from his grip. Let's not just raise Sophie together, he said, his voice steady, his eyes unwavering. Let's build a life. Sarah's breath caught, but she didn't cry. Her hand, still damp from dishwater, reached for his. She nodded, and their fingers closed around the promise, sealing something deeper than words. That weekend, they sat in a Seattle park Neil, Sarah, Sophie, Ethan on a blanket under a pink and amber sunset. Sophie dozed against Sarah's side. Ethan tossed grass blades like tiny rockets, and Daniel's arm rested around Sarah's back, a quiet anchor. They were a family, not by blood, but by choice, built one small, faithful moment at a time. But the story didn't stay quiet. A leak made from an engineer. Maybe a careless comment in the company cafeteria at the internet like a match to dry tinder. Nanny saves billion-dollar project. The genius Horizon Dynamics ignored. Sarah's name was everywhere, her face plastered across blurry company event photos and old, forgotten social media posts. Reporters camped outside the building, their cameras flashing like vultures circling a carcass. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Was she a prodigy? A fraud? Did she have help? Some hailed her as a hero, a symbol of overlooked talent. Others sneered, calling the story to perfect, a PR stunt by Horizon Dynamics to humanize their brand. A few even questioned her motives, whispering that she'd manipulated her way into the spotlight. Sarah was mortified. She sat in Daniel's office, her arms crossed tightly, her eyes locked on the floor. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Old classmates, distant relatives, even strangers. I didn't want this, she said, her voice strained. I just fixed something I saw, that's all. Daniel stood by the window, watching her, seeing the weight of unwanted fame pressing down on her. The woman who'd chosen responsibility over recognition was now trapped in a spotlight she'd never sought. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said gently, "and I won't let this hurt you." That afternoon, he called an all-staff meeting. No press, no cameras, just the people who worked at Horizon Dynamics, engineers, admins, janitors, all gathered in the company auditorium. Sarah stood off to the side, her hands clasped tightly, uncertain of what Daniel planned. He took the podium, his presence commanding but not cold. "By now, you've seen the headlines," he began, his voice clear and even. "But headlines chase clicks, not truth. 2 months ago, we were finished. Our best minds couldn't crack the navigation issue. We were days from scrapping the project. Then someone who wasn't even on the payroll saw what we missed." He turned slightly, gesturing towards Sarah. She didn't move, but she felt every eye in the room shift to her. "Her name's Sarah Mitchell," Daniel continued, "and she's not just Sophie's nanny. She's the reason this company still has a future." The room hushed, the weight of his words settling over the crowd. His tone softened, becoming almost personal. Sarah had a career in engineering, but life gave her a harder job caring for her family. She stepped away, not because she lacked skill or drive, but because she had the courage to choose what mattered most. And even when all she wanted was peace, she gave us her insight without hesitation, without ego. He lifted a small card from the podium. "Today, we're launching the Ethan Fund, a scholarship for students in science and engineering who've had to pause their dreams for personal hardships. Because the brightest minds don't always come with a resume or a badge." Applause started, tentative at first, then swelling. People stood, one by one, clapping not for hype but for respect, for recognition. Sarah met Daniel's eyes, her own glistening. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was seen fully, truthfully. Daniel stepped back, his voice steady. "And it's my honor to welcome our new Chief Systems Strategist, Sarah Mitchell." The room erupted, the applause warm and genuine. Sarah lifted her chin, her shoulders straightening. She wasn't a background figure anymore, not a whispered rumor or a helper in the shadows. She was valued, her story no longer buried. 6 months later, the navigation system launched to global acclaim, earning Horizon Dynamics a flood of awards and contracts. Sarah's quiet leadership had reshaped the team, teaching them to look beyond data, to listen differently, to think deeper. Her name appeared on patents, on industry panels, though she still walked the halls in jeans, her hair tied back, kneeling to hug Sophie when the girl ran to her with a new drawing or a wobbly-toothed grin. Ethan thrived, his health stable, his confidence growing with every therapy session, funded by the Ethan Fund. He was a teenager now, lanky and curious, sketching circuit diagrams on his tablet and shadowing engineers in the lab, his eyes bright with dreams of his own. One night, after Ethan suffered a minor health scare fever that led to a brief hospital stay, Sarah sat in his room, her face pale with worrying. The hospital was quiet, the only sound the soft beep of monitors and the hum of fluorescent lights. Ethan slept, his chest rising and falling under a thin blanket. Sarah's hands gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles white, as if bracing for the worst. Daniel arrived, not because she'd called, but because he knew. He walked in without a word, knelt before her, and gently took her hands. His were warm, grounding hers. "I didn't just find a fix for a car," he said, his voice low, his eyes locked on hers. "I found someone I can't imagine life without." Sarah didn't answer right away. Her eyes searched his, finding something steady, something true. Slowly, she leaned forward, her forehead touching his, and closed her eyes. In that small, sacred space, where no promises were spoken, but everything was understood, something old and aching in both of them began to heal. They stayed like that, hands clasped, foreheads touching, until Ethan stirred, his sleepy voice breaking the silence. "You guys are so weird," he mumbled, and Sarah laughed, the sound soft but real. Their wedding was small, held in a Seattle park under a canopy of cherry blossoms. Sophie carried a basket of petals, scattering them with gleeful abandon. Ethan walked beside her, his grin wide, his steps steadier than they'd been in years. The vows were simple, The promises deep love, trust, partnership, family. They weren't just marrying. They were choosing a life woven from sacrifice and care, from quiet moments that held more weight than grand gestures. Years later, Horizon Dynamics was a leader in ethical tech, known not just for innovation, but for its commitment to peer employees, communities, dreamers like the students supported by the Ethan Fund. Sarah and Daniel ran the company as partners, balancing ambition with humanity. Sophie, now a teenager, coded her own apps, mentored by Sarah, her laughter filling the house. Ethan, healthy and strong, studied engineering at MIT, inspired by his sister's path, but carving his own. This story wasn't about a car or a company. It was about Choice Shard, quiet, faithful once. It was about a woman who gave up everything and gained more, a man who learned to see beyond titles, and to kids who taught them both what family means. It was proof that love, not ambition, builds the things that last. But it was also a challenge, a call to question the systems that overlook people like Sarah, that value resumes over character, that dismiss sacrifice as weakness. It sparked debates in boardrooms and online forums, with some praising Sarah's story as a triumph, others arguing it exposed a broken system that forces talent to choose between duty and dreams. What did you think of Sarah and Daniel's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on the themes of sacrifice, justice, and the quiet violence of being overlooked. Did Sarah's choice to prioritize Ethan over her career resonate with you? What about the way society judges talent based on titles and credentials? And let's dig deeper. How do we fix the injustices that push people like Sarah into the shadows? Is it enough to celebrate their triumphs? Or do we need to dismantle the systems that bury them in the first place? Take a stand, share your perspective, and let's spark a real conversation about the unseen struggles in our world.